Hey, this is Adam Torres, and I'm here to tell you that it has never been easier to start your very own podcast. At Mission Matters, our goal is to amplify stories that matter. That means we want to help you start your podcast because your story matters. We can do this in 3 different ways. 1, join our podcast school and take a free or paid course. 2, visit our resources page where we've already figured out what you need, such as where to host your podcast. Or 3, heck, we can even do everything for you through our podcast agency, including editing for cheaper than you can do in-house. Oh, and no contract, service is month to month. Get started by heading over to missionmatters.com and click on Start a Podcast. All right, now let's get into the show. Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Innovation Podcast, your source for all things innovation. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres. Keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, today I have Christos Karafeizis on the line, and he's CEO and co-founder over at Gaspardesk. Christos, welcome to the show.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having me.
So, Christos, I'm excited to get into what you're doing over at Gaspardesk and the technology, but before we do that, let's go a little bit further into your background. So how did you get started in your career in business?
Sure. So I'm originally from Greece, as you probably can tell from a little bit of accent. So I moved to the U.S. 10 years ago. Came here for grad school, and then I was lucky enough to get hired by Microsoft. So I spent most of my career before Gaspardesk at Microsoft. I was there for 6.5 years. And then that's where I got all the expertise and industry knowledge around enterprise support and service desk industry, which now I took that knowledge and I'm applying it to Gaspardesk.
Man, that's awesome. And what a great story. And I think that's a great transition. So let's just dive right into today's topic. I want to get into Gaspardesk and the problems that you're solving in the marketplace. So just to kick it off, tell us a little bit more about the company, please.
Sure. So Gaspardesk is a cloud SaaS platform that we use AI to help companies manage and automate all their employees' IT support requests. And the problem that we're trying to solve, we all have been working at companies, and we know even today, although we live in the era of digital transformation, which actually, and we're going to talk about later, is getting accelerated due to COVID-19. Still, if you work at a company, you still struggle to get internal support when you have a simple IT support issue. And the metrics don't lie on this one, because even today it takes about 72 hours for a simple ticket to get resolved. Mm-hmm. It might take about 5 to 6 hours for a ticket to get assigned to an agent to get resolved, to get starting to troubleshooting. And then lastly, there's still it's very disproportional, the ratio between recommended service desk agent and employee, which results in high staffing costs and a lot of overhead that can be reallocated in more productive things, instead of trying to solve simple things that can be solved through automation without any human involvement.
I love that, and I'm a big fan of this because what this and why this matters. So I want to go a little bit further in this topic because what you said is correct. Like employees trying to get a simple internal task done. This is what I always tell people. Like, you can't have, if your internal systems and like things like getting this taken care of are not as good as when an employee's on their phone using Facebook or something else, if they're not that good, then, you know, there's a reason sometimes for turnover and for like not being happy. It's these little things like that that can add up. So you're thinking about it like they'll ask themselves, you know, if I can't get this done, is this a good like company I should be with long term? Is this a good like it starts spreading those little things of, is this a great place to work? Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because that's just my opinion and what I've seen, but I don't work in it day to day. Can you talk a little bit more about that and like employee satisfaction and how these things are tied together?
Exactly. You're on point. Especially, it's all about employee experience and employee satisfaction. And every company wants their employees to be productive, right? And although we have the technology in place to make that happen, still many companies struggle, and that may be for some employees, if they cannot get things done right at a very responsive time, then that might not keep them happy in the workplace, so they might go and look to work somewhere else. So it's really important both for the employees and the employee to make sure that whenever they have an issue, they can get resolved as soon as possible instead of having to wait, as we said at the beginning, sometimes maybe up to 72 hours.
Let's talk a little bit more of the types of companies that Gaspardesk works with, because I know that, there's some people listening to this right now that they're like, we've been looking for something like this, and I just want to make sure that, because at the end of this, I'm going to give you the opportunity to leave a website or social or however you want people to contact you and your team, but I want to make sure that the right types of companies and organizations do reach out. What kind of companies are usually a good fit for Gaspardesk overall, like if it's a size, an industry, or otherwise?
Yeah. In terms of size, usually we go after companies, I would say, more than 200 employees, because that's actually the number that we see that companies start to realize that they need to have a tool in place to manage and track all those requests. Because if you're like a small company of like 50, 60 people, you might not even have to use a tool, or you might even have internal IT support team working for the employee experience and make sure that they are productive. In terms of verticals, we go after verticals such as financial services, legal, retail, manufacturing, education, and healthcare. And also, now one of the things that I'd like to cover, because of COVID-19, many companies now are becoming remote first, right? So we go also after those companies because in our space, there has been a huge paradigm shift. Let's think about what was the experience as an employee while you were working at your company. Most employees would require to go at the office, right? So most of the time, if you had some issue, you would walk into the office and you would go to your favorite person in IT and ask them to process your service request or your IT support issue. Right? This doesn't work anymore, right? Because now we know that most people are going remote. So we have to think about, as organizations, companies and the leadership team need to think about new digital processes and tools to adapt to make sure that they are up to date with a new way of working. Because all companies now becoming remote first, and we need to have new tools and new capabilities for them.
Fantastic. That's awesome. So that being said, Christos, if somebody is listening to this, they're thinking about, whether or not Gaspardesk or a tool like this makes sense, what are some of the questions that they should be asking them to know? If they're ready for it, or if they haven't used something like this, what are some of the things that are just those common questions that you get day in and day out?
First of all, one of the things that they need to ask for companies looking for adapting tools is when you talk about automation, what do you mean, right? Because everybody talks about AI and automation, but that's sometimes they're very high terms without getting into details. So they should ask, either they talk to us or some other companies, what are the things that you actually automate, and what do you mean by AI? The second thing that they need to ask is tied to what they said, to the paradigm shift and everyone going remote, right? Again, before COVID, most employees, when they would like to get support done, either they would walk into the office, as I mentioned before, or they would just email the support team or just call the internal service desk, right? But now this is not an option anymore. And as a result, we need to take the employee as part of the equation, because all the tools that and the process we had in place, they were designed around the service desk agent. Right now, we have to take the employee into consideration. So they to ask those companies like, how is your tool? What actions your tool is taking to take into consideration the employee, and how the employee experience will become better and smoother, which means in our case more productive time and less tickets going to the service desk.
Fantastic. So, Christos, if somebody's listening to this and they fall in those categories and they're answering the questions for themselves, they're like, you know what, I got to contact this guy in this company. What's the best way for listeners to reach out and learn more about Gaspardesk?
Either they can go to our website, www.gaspardesk.com, or they can reach out directly to me either on LinkedIn or through email at christos@gaspardesk.com.
Fantastic. Well, Christos, really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing more about your background and all the great work that you're doing over at Gaspardesk. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave me a review on the Apple iTunes Store. And if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, Mission Matters Innovation, definitely give us a subscribe there, but also leave us some comments in the video. I'd love to know what kind of projects and things that you're working on. And Christos, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks, Adam.